Now, talk us through the market activity today. We're seeing that the NSE 20 ending the first quarter of the year on a positive note.
Very good afternoon to you. Yes, a positive upturn to the market. We've been on shaky ground over the past couple of days, but it's always a great thing to end, especially quarters or the half year, on a positive footing. Now, the market general movement aside, there have been big insights towards the inflation rate, a lot of activity and sentiments towards Kenya Airways expected rights issue, and a whole host of earnings results to decipher over the past couple of days. So all in all, the market is quite upbeat and hopes to remain that way.
Let's touch a bit on those inflation numbers. Inflation dropping for the fourth consecutive month to 15.61% in March. What impact do you see this decline having, if any, on the rate decision that is expected out from the MPC next week?
Well, to look into the interest rates, one would need to at least go back over the past couple of months, I'd like to go back to November when the interest rates touched highs of, the inflation rate touched highs of 19%, and the central bank MPC moved the CBR rate to about 18%, so as to keep the inflation rate in check. Now, we've seen the inflation rate easing over the past couple of months, 16% last month. This month, it's about 15%. And because of the huge lag that many times exists, I don't expect the MPC to have any particular movement in terms of changing the CBR rate. So going forward, I think it's extremely unlikely that there would be an increase, but there is some room for a deceleration, rather a decrease in the MPC rate, though I think in the next week we'll keep the central bank will keep that rate steady.
And you also touched on Kenya Airways, that rights issue. The airliner has already received about 70% of that, of 20.6 billion shillings rights offer. The share has, however, fallen back. It's sitting at 12.55 shillings, which makes it more attractive for shareholders to buy it at those levels rather than to enter into this rights issue. What type of demand are you seeing coming through?
To be honest, it's been a particularly dicey issue for an investor going into Kenya Airways. For a long time, we've known that the airline does intend to have a cash call to raise some funds for the fleet expansion. And with them today having released the rights issue information memorandum and launching the rights process officially, the market still has retained that kind of a dicey position. With the rights are at 14 shillings, and the market is just short of that, about 13.90 or so. Now, for an investor going in, you have to consider the brokerage commissions, and considering that they're about 2% in this market, it would make sense to buy the stock off the market if the price were below 13 shillings and 70 cents. So that's really the play one has to consider if you don't even look into the longer term perspective. But the longer term perspective considered, one would be well advised to particularly kind of hold back and actually consider what kind of duration that they are looking into for the Kenya Airways stock, because with a huge increase in the kind of stocks that the stock float coming in, it's still dicey at this point, and the market is at best cautionary on the stock.
So cautionary on the stock. Are you perhaps buying into the stock at this stage? Are you going to be participating in that rights issue?
Well, unfortunately, I may have a psychological anchor on this particular stock. and this is a common thing for those who've been in the market for a long time. I've seen it at 12 shillings, I've seen it at 120 shillings. So the psychological anchor on my end really wouldn't augur too well to advise our viewers, who I'd really like to advise that they ought to always have their own considerations in mind even as they take the investment advice that we give on the show.
So Kimathi, you're quite cautious on Kenya Airways, but looking at Jubilee Holdings out with results, that stock ended down in the session. What did you make of those results?
Well, I thought those results were quite good, considering the very tough market environment that we had in the financial service sector over 2011. Now, Jubilee happens to have benefited quite a bit from its regional exposure, which is a thing I always like to emphasize upon on any investor looking onto the NSE. You would really want that regional exposure so that you could kind of mitigate the Kenyan environment peculiarities. So Jubilee, in this case, they operate across East Africa and in Mauritius, and through the market penetrations in all these particular markets, we saw their top line gross insured revenues come in over CNC 38% growth, and that really was a great thing for Jubilee. Unfortunately, on the backside of it, so did the expenses. They too increased by about 38%, and all in all, unfortunately, net, the earnings per share only grew by about 2%. So the market hasn't particularly taken that news too well, and the stock came down today, although on the positive side, there is a dividend payout of 4 shillings and 50 cents, and in addition, a bonus share of 1 for every 10 held. All right. So all in all, Jubilee, a pretty good market play for its diversity into the Eastern African region.